Hey guys, what's going on? Another EDH guide brought to you by Counterspell Hater here. We're going back to Innistrad, but really we're going back to Innistrad Midnight Helm, not Crimson Vow. And today's episode is dedicated to Slogurk, the Overslime. Uh, it is a 3/3 legendary ooze with trample for one generic or green or blue. And it says whenever a land card is put into your graveyard from anywhere, put a +1/+1 counter on Slogurk, the Overslime. Then you can remove 3 +1/+1 counters from Slogurk and return it to its owner's hand. So sort of protection. And when Slogurk leaves the battlefield, return up to 3 target land cards from your graveyard to your hand, so you can get lands back. We've got mill, and then we've got value for playing the commander like the way we are. So starting off with Hadrian Crab is an O2 crab for 1 blue with landfall, and it says whenever a land enters battlefield under your control, player puts the top 3 cards of his or her library into their graveyard. So obviously we're going to be targeting ourselves. Sweet Oblivion for 1 generic and a blue. It is a sorcery that says target player puts the top 4 cards of their library into their graveyard. Escape cost of 3 generic and a blue. Exile 4 other cards from your graveyard. You may cast this card from your graveyard for escape cost. So that way we can utilize the cards that are being put into our graveyard to put even more cards into our graveyard and lure ourselves for more. Fleet Swallower is a 6/6 fish for 5 generic and double blue. And when it attacks, target player puts the top half of his or her library, rounded up, into his or her graveyard. Mesmeric Orb is an artifact for 2 generic. That says whenever a permanent becomes untapped, that permanent's controller mills the card. So this is not just us, but our opponents as well. To mill a card, they put the top card of their library into their graveyard. Fraying Sanity is an enchantment or curse for 2 generic and blue. Enchant player at the beginning of each end step, the enchanted player puts the top X cards of his or her library into his or her graveyard, where X is the number of cards put into that graveyard from anywhere this turn. Myriad Phantasm. For 3 generic and double blue is a 5/1 spirit with flying that 1 generic and a blue. It can shuffle itself into its owner's library. And if that player does activate that ability, he or she reveals cards on top of that library until a card named Myriad Phantasm is revealed. That the player puts that card onto the battlefield and all other cards reveal this way into his or her graveyard. Rolanok, the Omnivore, is a legendary frog 3/3 for 2 generic, a green and a blue. And whenever a frog you control attacks, mill 3 cards. And whenever a permanent card is put into your graveyard from your library, exile it with a pro counter on it. And you may play lands and cast spells from among cards you own in exile with pro counters on them. So you can mill lands now and get them back. And also any spells that are milled, you can cast them thanks to Rolanok, the Omnivore. Sage's Rodenzen for 2 generic and a blue. He is a 2/3 Vidalcan Wizard. And he says, whenever another blue creature enters the battlefield under your control, target player mills 2 cards. Traumatize for 3 generic and double blue sorcery. Target player puts the top half of his or her library rounded down into his or her graveyard. Court of Cunning for 1 generic and double blue is an enchantment that says when it enters the battlefield, you become the monarch, meaning that you draw a card at the beginning of your end step, and whenever the monarch is dealt combat damage by a creature, that creature's controller becomes the monarch. And Core of Cunning also says at the beginning of your upkeep, any number of target players each mill 2 cards. If you're the monarch, each of those players mill 10 cards instead. Manic Scribe, 1 generic and a blue. He is a 0/3 human wizard. And it says when Manic Scribe enters the battlefield, each opponent puts the top 3 cards, well, mills 3. Delirium, at the beginning of each opponent's upkeep, if there are 4 more card types among cards in your graveyard, that player puts the top 3 cards of Wyverns for a graveyard. There's definitely better card to replace with this. But it's still fine because it can mill, I guess. But maybe something like the Ozolith, so that when your commander leaves the battlefield, it puts the plus counters it gained on it onto Ozolith. That way you don't really lose much of anything. Splinter Fright for 2 generic and a green. It is an elemental with trample whose power and toughness are each equal to no creature cards in the graveyard. But that doesn't matter, because what does matter is at the beginning of the upkeep, put the top 2 cards of your library into your graveyard. Now, keep in mind you will need creature cards in your graveyard, so maybe there is probably a better card to put in here that isn't Splinter Fright. So maybe Next Blue Ancient, just for like better mana ramp. Just play Next Blue Ancient if you're in green, like take advantage. Sands of Delirium for 3 generic is an artifact that for X you can tap it and target player puts the top X cards. Well, mills X for short. Savage Conception for 3 generic and double green is a sorcery that puts a 3/3 green beast creature token into play. And for trades, you can play this card from your graveyard by discarding a land card in addition to paying its other costs. Ayula's Influence, triple green for enchantment that you can discard a land card to create a 2/2 green bear creature token. Squirrel Wrangler is a 2/2 human druid for 2 generic and double green. And for 1 generic green, you can sacrifice a land to Squirrel Wrangler to create 2 1/1 green squirrel creature tokens. And for 1 generic green, you can also sacrifice a land to Squirrel Wrangler. And squirrel creatures get +1/+1 until the turn, and that's on all sides. Terravore for 1 generic and double green is a light law. I have no idea how to pronounce that creature type. 0/0 trample. Its power and toughness are each equal to the number of land cards in all graveyards. All graveyards. So your opponent's, yours, you get it. Elvish Reclaimer. For a singular green, he is a 1/2 elf warrior and he gets +2/+2 as long as there are 3 or more land cards in your graveyard. And then for 2 generic, you can tap and sacrifice a land to Elvish Reclaimer. Search your library for a land card, so not just a basic, but it can also be non-basic. Put it onto the battlefield tabs, then show up your library. World Shaper, really good card. If you haven't seen it in standard or in any MT, just go check out like MG Arena videos. Not mine, because mine do not happen to feature World Shaper. But this deck here does. If you don't know what World Shaper is, well, I'm about to explain to you. For 3 generic and a green, he is a 3/3 Merfolk Shaman. And when he attacks, you may mill 3. And then when he dies, you put all land cards from your graveyard onto the battlefield tabs. Scape Shift. It is a sorcery for 2 generic and double green that you can sacrifice any number of lands to and search your library for that many land cards. So again, it doesn't have to be basic. And put them onto battlefield tap, then show your library. Croson Restore. This is probably more of value, but it's in here. For 2 generic and a green, she is a 1/2 druid that can tap to untap target land. But threshold, you can tap her and untap up to 3 target lands. However, you can only use this ability if you have 7 or more cards in your graveyard, which you probably will due to all the milling. The Croson Restore is essentially 3 more mana at your disposal because you're untapping 3 lands. Green Seeker. For green, she is a 1/1 elf spell shaper that for green you can tap and discard a card to search your library for a basic land card, reveal it, and put it into your hand and shuffle your library. You can discard a land card to find the land card. Sylvan Safekeeper for a green. He is a 1/1 human wizard that you can sacrifice a land to and give target creature you control shroud until in turn, meaning it can be the target of spells or abilities. So this means on all sides, so not only opponents, but you. Fortitude. For 1 generic and a green, it's an enchantment aura in this case, but this was like 1993 to 1998, so now it's in that case it's enchant creature. When Fortitude is put into a graveyard from play, return Fortitude to its owner's hand so it comes back, and then you can sacrifice the forest to generate enchanted creature. So keep Slogurk safe. Nanduko Cultivator for 3 generic and a green. It's a 2/2 insect druid that when it comes into play or onto the battlefield, you may discard any number of land cards from your hand, and then you put that many plus counters on Nanduko Cultivator and draw that many cards. This Constrictor. Well, questionable wizards. But for 1 generic and a green, it's a 2/2 snake that is within this deck. So, it discards the card to give itself +1/+1 as reach. I mean, we're discarding lands to it, so it's in the deck, even though it's questionable. And then Zern Orb is a free artifact. Yeah, 0 that you can sacrifice a land to gain 2 life. So keep yourself in the game, keep yourself immortal. Gerlath's Masterpiece, 3 generic and double blue. It is a zombie horror with flying. It's a 7/7, and it gets -1/-1 for each card in your hand. And then for 3 generic and a blue, you can discard 3 cards to return it from your graveyard to the battlefield tapped. Keening Stone for 6 generic, and it's an artifact that for 5 generic, it can tap and target player mills X, where X is the number of cards in that player's graveyard. So obviously targeting yourself. Forgotten Creation for 3 generic and blue. It is a zombie horror with Skulk. It's 3/3. So Skulk is the creature with Skulk can't be blocked by creatures with greater power. So in this case, if our opponent had a 4/4 out and we had Forgotten Creation out, that 4/4 could not block Forgotten Creation. And Forgotten Creation also says at the beginning of your upkeep, you may discard all the cards in your hand. If you do, draw that many cards. Jace Memory Adept. For 3 generic and double blue, he is a planeswalker with 4 loyalty. And then you can up his loyalty by 1 to draw a card, and then have target player put the top 2 cards of his or her library into his or her graveyard. Or mill 2, I guess. And then for 0, you can have target player mill 10 and -7. Any number of target players each draw 20 cards. Jace Valerian, for 1 generic and double blue, he is a planeswalker who has 3 loyalty, and then you can up his loyalty by 2 to give everyone a card, so everyone draws a card. -1, target player draws a card, so you can target yourself. Or -10, target player mills 20. Life from the Loam, a very broken card, but it's in here because for 1 generic and a green is a sorcery with Dredge 3. We'll get into that in a moment, but it can return up to 3 target land cards from your graveyard to your hand. So if you've gotten your lands into your graveyard and you've pumped up Slogurk, you can return them from your graveyard to your hand with Life from the Loam, so you can discard them again. And then Dredge 3, meaning if you draw a card instead, you may mill 3. And if you do, you return this card from your graveyard to your hand. Otherwise, you draw a card. Very good. Jace's Archivist or Archivist, whichever you prefer, is for 1 generic and double blue, a Vidalcan Wizard 2/2 that for 1 blue you can tap it and sacrifice it. No, don't even sacrifice it. Excuse me, I was thinking of a totally different card. I was thinking Magus of the Wheel, but each player discards his or her hand, then draws cards equal to the greatest number of cards a player discarded this way. So a windfall, but you can do it every turn, essentially. Like every once in a while. Avenger Zendikar. Now I believe we get into like value. So for 5 generic and double green is an elemental 5/5 that when it enters the battlefield, it puts an 01 green plant creature token onto the battlefield for each land you control. And then whenever the land enters the battlefield under your control, you may put a postal counter on each plant you control. Rishkar's Expertise for 4 generic and double green is a sorcery that draws us cards equal to the greatest power among creatures we control. And then you may cast a card with converted mana cost 5 or less from your hand without paying its mana cost. Renting Evolution for 2 generic and a green is an enchantment that doubles the number of plus counters put onto Slogurk. Seikiko, Mother of Summer, 4 generic and double green. She is a legendary snake shaman 3/3, and whenever a creature you control deals combat damage to a player, add that much green mana to your mana pool. This mana doesn't cause mana burn. Mana burn was an old thing back then, but it doesn't exist now unless you count something in Commander Legends. I completely forgot the legendary creature. Until end of turn, this mana doesn't empty from your mana pool as phases end. So you can store that mana for like post combat main phase and stuff, that sort of stuff. Until the end of turn though. Civic Ascendancy, an easy win because for green and a blue is an enchantment that for 1 generic, a green and a blue, it can put a plus counter on target creature you control. And then whenever 1 or more plus counters are put on a creature you control, put that many growth counters on Civic Ascendancy. Alexa, stop. At the beginning of your upkeep, if Civic Ascendancy has 20 or more growth counters on it, you win the game. Next, we have Iridescent War Beetle for 4 generic and a green. Is an insect 3/4. At the beginning of your end step, create a 1/1 green insect creature token for each plus counter you've put on creature under your control this turn. So if you haven't seen this thing in action, go check out some of my MTG Arena videos. Because that thing is insane. Crucible of Worlds for 3 generic. Is an artifact that allows us to play lands cards from our graveyard. We can only play 1 land per turn, still, like usual, except we can play 1 for our land now. And for 3 generic and a green, we have Centaur Vine Crusher. It is a 1/1 plant centaur with trample that enters the battlefield with a number of plus counters on it equal to the number of land cards in all graveyards. So again, your opponents. And whenever a land card is put into your graveyard from anywhere, so that's on any side from anywhere, so sacrifice, discard, mill, you may pay double green, and if you do, you return Centaur Vine Crusher from your graveyard to your hand. Doubling Season for 4 generic and green is an enchantment that doubles the number of tokens we would control and the amount of counters we would put. That would be put on permanents we control. So postal counters, more specifically.
Alexa, start a 30-minute timer. 30 minutes, starting now. While you
Triumphal.
wait, would you like to test your wits with a round of the game Jeopardy?
No. Triumph of the Hordes. For 2 generic and double green, it is a sorcery that says until end of turn, creatures you control get +1/+1 and gain trample and infect. Creatures you control with infect. No, creatures with infect, I should say, deal damage to creatures in the form of -1/-1 counters, and to players in the form of poison counters. And if a player has 10 or more poison counters at any time, that player loses the game. So, moving on, we have Feed the Pack. 5 generic and a green is an enchantment that says at the beginning of your end step, you may sacrifice a non-token creature. If you do, put X 2/2 green wolf creature tokens onto the battlefield, where X is the sacrifice creature's toughness. So you can sacrifice Slogurk in case it's going to die or be destroyed at your end step, like your opponent's next turn. If you know they're going to do it. Or to like just have multiple blockers, and then boom, you got an army, because like Slogurk is probably going to be pretty big. Ancient Green Warden, 4 generic and double green, is an elemental with reach 5/7 that allows us to play land cards from our graveyard. And if a land enters the battlefield, causes a triggered ability of a opponent you control to trigger, that ability triggers an additional time. Lotus Cobra, to go along with it, is a snake, 2/1 for 1 generic and a green. Landfall whenever a land enters the battlefield under your control. You may add 1 mana of any one color to your mana pool, so helpless ramp in a sense. Titania, Protector of Argoth, for 3 generic and double green. It is a legendary elemental, 5/3, and when it enters the battlefield, return target land card from your graveyard to the battlefield, and whenever a landing control is put into a graveyard from the battlefield, create a 5/3 green elemental creature token. I don't think we have much sacrifice in here, so this may have not been a good idea. But if you're running land sacrifice, definitely play this card. But you could probably do something better, like maybe Altar of Dementia to mill someone out, or mill yourself even more. Although then you'd be probably sacrificing Slogurk to that, most likely. Turn to Timber, Silver for 2 generic and a green. He is an elf druid, 3/3, and he says whenever 1 or more land cards are put into your graveyard from anywhere, create an 0/1, green plant creature token. And for a green, you can sacrifice 3 creatures and return target land card from your graveyard to your hand. And then we get into our non-basic lands. Dust Bowl. You can tap to add a color to our mana pool, or for 3 generic, you can tap and sacrifice a land to destroy target non-basic land. Drownyard Temple is a land that can tap for colors, or for 3 generic, it can return itself from our graveyard to the battlefield tapped. Lotus Field is a land with hexproof and enters the battlefield tapped, and when it enters, sacrifice 2 lands, and it can tap for 3 mana of any one color. Gargoyle Castle is a land that can tap for a colorless, or for 5 generic, it can tap and sacrifice itself to put a 3/4 colorless gargoyle artifact creature token flying onto the battlefield. Strip Mine is a land that can tap for a colorless, or can tap to sacrifice itself to destroy target land. Cryptic Caves is a land that can tap for a colorless, or for 1 generic, it can tap and sacrifice itself to draw us a card, but we can only activate that ability if we control power for more lands. Myriad Landscape, it enters battlefield tapped, and it can tap for a colorless as well, or for 2 generic, we can tap it and sacrifice it to search our library for 2 land cards, for 2 basic lands that share a land type, then put them onto battlefield tapped, shuffle our library. Evolving Wilds, it's a land that can tap to sacrifice itself to search our library for a basic land card, and we can put that card onto battlefield tapped. then shuffle our library. Blighted Woodland is a land that can tap for colors, or for 3 generic and a green, it can tap to sacrifice itself to allow us to search for up to 2 basic land cards and put the monster battlefield tapped, then shuffle our library. Blighted Fen is a land that can tap for colors, or for 4 generic and a black, it can tap and sacrifice itself, and target opponent sacrifices a creature. Spawning Bed for is a land that can tap for colors, or for 6 generic, it can tap itself and it can tap and sacrifice itself to put 3 1/1 colorless Eldrazi Scion creature tokens onto the battlefield that have sacrificed this creature, add 1 colors to your mana pool. God's Eye, Gates of the Rekai. No. It's a legendary land that can tap to add colors, or well, not or, but when it is put into a graveyard from play, put a 1/1 color spirit creature token into play. I would not consider that very legendary, but whatever. Warped Landscape is a land that can tap for colorless, or for 2 generic. We can tap and sacrifice it and search the library for a basic land card, put it onto the battlefield tap, and shuffle our library. Dunes of the Dead is a land that can tap for colors, or well, not or, when it is put into our graveyard from the battlefield, we create a 2/2 black summon creature token. Crystal Vein is a land that can tap for colors, or can tap and then we sacrifice it to add 2 colors to our mana pool. Scorched Ruins is a land that if Scorched Ruins would enter the battlefield, sacrifice 2 untapped lands. Instead, if you do, put Scorched Ruins onto the battlefield. If you don't, put it into its owner's graveyard or sacrifice it. Either way, if we keep it, then it can tap to add quadruple colors, or if we don't, then that's another possible kind that's put onto Slogurk. Fabled Passage is a land that can tap and then sacrifice itself to allow us to search our library for a basic land card, put it onto the battlefield tapped, and then shuffle our library. And if you control 4 more lands, untap that land. Litrajara Mirror Lake is a land that enters battlefield tapped, or it can tap to add a blue, or for 2 generic, double green, and a blue, it can tap and sacrifice itself to create a token that's a copy of target creature you control, except it enters battlefield with an additional plus counter on it. We can only activate this ability anytime you could cast a sorcery, so mostly only on your turn. And I bit my tongue, so wow. Shelldock Isle is a land with Hideaway, meaning that when that land comes into play, first of all, it comes in tapped, but it allows us to look at the top 4 cards of our library and remove 1 from the game face down or exile, and then put the rest on the bottom of your library. You can tap it to add a blue mana to your mana pool, or if a blue, you can tap it and you may play the remove card from exile without paying its mana cost. You may play the remove card without paying its mana cost if a library has 20 or fewer cards in it due to all of our milling. This will most likely be able to happen. And if not, we have Monster Bridge, which does the same thing, but it's in green, so it can tap to add a green, or for green, it can tap, or I guess we can tap it. And you may play the remove card without paying its mana cost if creatures you control have total power 10 or greater, which is going to be easy because we probably just going to need Slogurk to get really big. Then we have 15 forests, basic, I should add, and 15 basic islands. And with all of that, the end of this commander guide. I hoped you enjoyed this video. If you did, please like and subscribe. Guys, we're only at 8 subscribers. We just need 2 more and then we can do 10 sub special. Don't forget to hit that notification bell Hit the like button if I didn't already tell you, but now I have once or twice. And also throughout all these videos. And share this video with others, like I said. And I think I've been forgetting to tell you guys that you don't have to build the commander decks in this way. You can use some of the cards and then use some of the cards you have at home, or you can go all the way, or just like no cards at all. This is just a suggestion to get you kind of going the right way. All of these commander guides have been that way. I've been kind of forgetting to mention that here in the past, but now I have. Anyways, I will see you next time.